For those who are following, we're going to talk about this book.
Well, let's step back quickly. What is your research interest?
When I arrived in Australia in 2004, I asked myself, I was very grateful to Australia for hosting a migrant. And I asked myself, how can I give back to Australian society? And I identified two problems. The first problem was, of course, bureaucracy. In my view, Australia is neither a democracy nor an aristocracy. It's a bureaucracy. You see, Israel is an ad hocracy. Everything is ad hoc. But Australia is a bureaucracy. But what can a professor do? Just swallow the bitter pill. The other problem that I identified in 2004 was the Aboriginal plight, the fact that Aboriginal people were here for at least 50,000 years, and they lost their land, they lost everything. And then I said to myself, had I been a dentist, I would have given them teeth. Many Aboriginal friends of mine have no teeth. Had I been a psychologist, I would have done pro bono therapies against smoking. Almost every Aboriginal friend of mine smokes. Almost no non-Aboriginal friend of mine smokes in Adelaide. It's amazing, this divide. But I'm a linguist, and I said, look, out of 400 languages, only 13, in fact, now it's only 12, are alive and kicking, so 3%. So what happened to the 97% of languages in Australia? I said, wow, there is a niche here that I must introduce, and the niche is applying lessons from the Hebrew revival, of which I was an expert, and I am an expert, to the reclamation and empowerment of Aboriginal languages and cultures. So I decided to use my expertise from Israel, which is linguistics and what I call revivalistics, to help Aboriginal people, because I believe that when you revive your heritage language, it doesn't matter whether you're Aboriginal, Italian, Slovene, Greek, you actually reconnect with your intellectual sovereignty, with your cultural autonomy, with your spirituality, with your well-being, with your soul. So I would urge Italians as well to resort to their dialects, for example, if they come from a very small village in Italy, despite the fact that they live in Australia, which is kind of very English-speaking. So, and then I said, okay, so how should I do it? And I said I will do it in the macro, in the micro, and in the mucro. In the macro, it was establishing revivalistics. And this book that you showed to our Facebook spectators is exactly what it is about. It's revivalistics. It's a new transdisciplinary field of inquiry surrounding language revival from any angle, by the way, not just from linguistics, from the angle of maybe dance, music, law, mental health, architecture. So for example, when you revive a language, should you use a Western architecture to give the Aboriginal people the feeling that the government acknowledges them? Or should you use an Aboriginal setting, like under a tree in the bush, in the outback? Or should you use a building which is like our building here of Radio Italiana, but on the other hand, you will have, instead of the Italian flag, you will have a design that is Aboriginal. So it's kind of a mishmash. This is an architectural question. So this is in the macro. In the micro, I decided to reclaim the Barngarla Aboriginal language of Eyre Peninsula. And I have been doing it for 10 years exactly 10 years. And in the mucro, I did a massive open online course. It's a MOOC, and it's about language revival.
Okay, interesting what you said about also in the book, you mentioned about maybe linguists coming to study Slovene or something in Australia. Well, in fact, I know that linguists from Italy go overseas to hear the old dialect because they get lost. They got lost in Italy because of the normalization of the language. And time is running. I'll ask you, operation, how do you revive the language?
The first thing you need is the resources, the material. So in the case of Barngarla, I discovered a resource from 1844 with 3,500 words written by a German Lutheran missionary who wanted to show the heathens, in quotation marks, the light, which is Il Padre, Il Figlio e lo Spirito Santo, what is ironic and what is beautiful about writing the Rome of the past is that you use a resource which was written in order to Christianize, but you use it for the opposite reason, which is to reconnect with the Aboriginal spirituality, because in his book, he actually had a lot of Aboriginal spirituality. Because he needed to find words for, like, how do you say, like divine. So it's very, very interesting, this symmetry. The other thing you need to introduce technology. So I have made an app for the Barngarla language, which is free of charge, and you can just learn Barngarla from the app. And what is beautiful here is that technology is the reason that so many Aboriginal languages were killed. So, for example, the ships, the weapons, the black cars stealing my friend Howard Richards, etc. And now we use technology in order to reconnect with it. The second thing you need the Aboriginal community to want to reclaim the language. If the Aboriginal community, or if the Italian community from Reggio Calabria, from a small village in Calabria that exists in Adelaide, if they do not want to reclaim this dialect, then of course I'm not going to do it in a laboratory. It is something that has to include a communal agreement. So the minority or the Aboriginal people, they're always at the wheel. They are the mothers. I'm only the stepfather.
Okay. So we have to finish now this segment. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thanks for coming into the studio.
It's a pleasure.
Now, question without notice. Is there a particular singer or song, Italian singer or songer that was significant to you?
Have you? Yes? Let me think about it. I very much like the song which is by Bocelli about this Mascagni. Mascagni had this amazing intermezzo. Mm-hmm. And I think that Bocelli managed to put within his song about Mascagni the intermezzo. But in fact, I love intermezzo. So in other words, it's not the song, it's rather the intermezzo by Mascagni. For me, this is one of the most Italian tunes. And I remember that my father always... Esatto.
Ok, allora, Maestro Riccardo Monti dirige l'intermezzo della Cavalleria Rusticana.
Grazie. Grazie mille.
E quindi ringraziamo il professor Ghil'ad Zuckermann, presente qui su Radio Italia 1 Adelaide, un saluto a chi ci sta seguendo su Facebook Live, ed ecco Cavalleria Rusticana intermezzo, diretta da Riccardo Monti.
Ah, che bello! Mi piace molto, anche mi piace Mascagni di Bocelli. Bocelli ha scritto, che bello, grazie.